When they write the story of your life, what genre will it be? Welcome to the depths. Hello, welcome to Reading from the Depths. My name is Lecton. Thanks for spending some time with me today. So today I have an original book tag that I've created, and I hope lots of people join in on it. I really enjoy book tags. I enjoy seeing what other booktubers come up with. But to be honest, if it's just a book tag that asks you to list different books, for me, I'd list the same books over and over again, regardless of the tag. And I think that's the case with a lot of booktubers because we have our favorite books that we go back to over and over again. So I wanted to do a book tag that gets to know a little bit more about the person. And, I'm not a big fan of the kind of parasocial relationships that the internet has fostered. I think they actually can cause us to not engage in healthy, in real life relationships. So I don't particularly think that kind of parasocial relationships and that aspect of the internet and YouTube is all that great. But I don't think that's a real concern for BookTube. I think that's more for celebrities and for musicians and actors. And with the whole BookTube community, when I am watching people and listening to their reviews and listening to them talk about books and art and why a book is meaningful to them, or to give advice or suggestions or recommendations, I like to get to know that person a little bit. It gives me more perspective about where they come from, why they like the books they like, and that informs how I engage with their recommendations and with their content in general. So I think giving a little bit of the flavor of what makes us unique and our personal history that brings us to BookTube can be a boon overall. And so with that in mind, I wanted to create this book tag. So I listed out a number of different genres, and then I created questions that kind of associated with all those genres that by answering them could give you a little bit of insight into your life. And my original plan had been to suggest people to look at the last 10 books they read, and depending on the genres of those books, then they answer those questions, to add a little bit of chaos or randomness to it. But then I realized that if I did that, I'd probably only have 2 or 3 different genres represented. So I thought, oh, well, what I should do is I should create subgenres. So I went through every genre and added 4 subgenres. And so in the end, I ended up writing 60 questions, which is insane. That is an insane thing to do. So I have those 60 questions. But what I think the best way to go about this is, and the instructions for the tag, is there are a couple different ways you can do it. The first way is what I'm calling being genre agnostic, but a generalist. So that is, of the 12 genres listed, choose 10 of them and answer the general question for those 10 genres. The next way you can do it is, again, genre agnostic, but a specialist. So again, from the 12 genres that I list, choose out 10, but then instead of answering the general question for that genre, choose one of the subgenres and answer the question from that. And then the next way is, instead of being genre agnostic, you could be genre partisan. So choose your 2 favorite genres and answer all 5 questions associated with each of those genres. And then the last way is, this is the internet and there are no rules. So do whatever you want. Choose 10 questions that you want to answer, or more, or less, whatever works for you, And if you think of a question that can be associated with a subgenre I don't have listed, then write that in and make sure to tag me and I'll add it to my list. So that's the way I see about going this now. I did want it to tie it to what you've been reading recently. I thought there'd be a nice connection there. But in the end, it just seems like this is an easier way to go about it. So if you have a more creative way to choose what questions or what genres you want to answer, then great. I'd say go for it. Otherwise, these are some of the suggestions. So I'm not going to read all the questions because, like I said, there are 60 questions, and that's an insane thing to have created in the first place. What I will do really quickly is read all the genres and the subgenres. And then what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to do the first option. So I'm going to be genre agnostic, and I'm going to answer all 12 instead of just choosing 10, since I'm the one that created this. After reading out all the genres, I will go through the general questions for all of the 12 main genres, and those are what I'm going to be answering. So to run through them very quickly, 12 genres are, first we have horror, with the subgenres of slasher, folk, gothic, and cosmic horror. Then we have sci-fi, and with the subgenres of space operas, apocalyptic or dystopian sci-fi, military sci-fi, and cyberpunk. Then we have fantasy, and fantasy has the subgenres of high fantasy, swords and sorcery or heroic fantasy, urban fantasy, and dark academia. Then we have the thriller or suspense genre, and that has the subgenres of espionage or political thrillers, techno thrillers, psychological thrillers, and conspiracy thrillers. And then we have the genre of action adventure, and that has the subgenres of disaster stories, buddy adventures or kids on bike stories, westerns, and superheroes. Next we have mystery and crime, and that has the subgenres of noir or detective, and true crime, procedurals, and capers or heists. Next we have the genre of humor, and that has the subgenres of satire, black comedy, comedy of errors, and anti-humor. Then we have romance, And romance has the subgenres of romantasy or paranormal romance, steamy romance, romantic suspense, and historical romance. Then we have nonfiction, and nonfiction has the subgenres of memoir, history, politics or activism, and spiritual or self-help. And then we have what I'm calling anti-normative fiction, which I know isn't a real genre, but for me, that is encapsulating the 4 subgenres here of queer fiction, weird fiction, transgressive fiction, and the anti-novel or experimental fiction. And then we have the genre of literary fiction, which again I know isn't really a genre, but still, literary fiction. And then the subgenres here are the classics, speculative fiction or magical realism, contemplative fiction, and then family or generational dramas. And then lastly, the last genre is poetry, and that has a subgenre of free verse, sonnets or haikus, epic or dramatic poetry, and abstract poetry. So those are the 12 genres and then 4 subgenres for each of them. And so again, you can pick and choose whatever is calling to you, whatever creative way you want to choose what questions you answer. I say go for it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to answer the general questions of all 12 of the genres listed. However, all of the genres and all of the subgenres and their questions will be listed down below in the description. And if it's too long to fit in the description, I'll probably also have a pinned comment, and they'll all be listed in that pinned comment. And if anyone comes up with new questions and other subgenres to add, and they let me know about them, I'll add them to that pinned comment so other people can find them as well. And so I should also say that when you answer these questions, you can answer them as earnestly or as playfully as you like, right? This is all about what is comfortable to you and to share a little bit of yourself in some way and to share what part of your story brings you to reading and to engaging in art and literature in whatever way you do. So if that's going to be earnest answers or playful answers or sardonic answers, whatever works for you. It's entirely open-ended. Again, it's the internet. There are no rules. So here we go. Here are my answers as a genre agnostic. First genre, horror. What scares you? You know, I read so much horror and I watch so many horror movies that nothing really conventionally scares me. And even kind of like existential dread, you know, I don't really have a fear of death, I think you could say. In my spiritual tradition, it's advised to begin meditating on death right at the beginning of your spiritual journey. So I meditate on death and impermanence every day. And I don't want to die, but I'm not afraid of it. And on top of that, you know, I have training in hospital chaplaincy and hospice care, and I have helped people that are actively dying and been with their friends and family when people actively die. And so it's just something that I have a lot of experience with. So I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of supernatural things. I don't have kind of the normal fears. So I'm going to be a little more earnest in my answer. And, you know, in my tradition of Buddhism, when we talk about fear, we say there's 2 types of fear. There is healthy fear and unhealthy fear. So unhealthy fear is fear that either paralyzes you or encourages you to engage in non-virtuous behavior. So for example, a fear of being hungry might cause you to hoard food or to steal or something like this. So that's an unhealthy fear. And other types of fear, as you know, are very paralyzing and they stifle you and they don't allow you to grow or anything. Healthy fear is fear that encourages you to engage in positive actions, right? To engage in virtuous activity. So healthy fear is something that you can actually cultivate and is useful to your path to becoming a better person, at least as we understand it. So for me, I think the thing I fear the most, I hope it's a healthy fear. It's going to sound so pretentious, but I constantly fear that I am not doing enough. So as a Buddhist, as a Tibetan Buddhist, especially as a monk, I've committed my life to serving other sentient beings and to do my best to eliminate the suffering of other sentient beings. And I constantly feel like I could be doing more. You know, I have so many privileges and opportunities to me. The fact that I was able to go to really good schools, study the way I did, then I have the blessings to become a monk and to study, etc. It's just a lot, you know? And so I often feel like I'm not doing enough. And now I'm studying full time. I'm working in this 25-year-long degree program to improve my ability to help others. I've been teaching meditation for 20 years, and I've given spiritual teachings or advice or, you know, ministry work for maybe 15 years. I translate sacred texts and I translate prayers and other commentaries. And so I'm busy all the time, but I always feel like I could be doing more. And especially now that I've gotten even more involved in YouTube and BookTube, there's this constant nagging fear that I'm just lazy and I'm not doing enough. And I do like to think that I engage with reading and pop culture in such a way as to be part of my spiritual path. And I don't expect that to be true for people that are listening to my reviews and so forth. But for me, the idea of getting rid of the distinction between the spiritual life and the mundane life is an important one. So I do like to think that even in the realm of BookTube, what I'm doing is somehow trying to help others in some small way. But I'm constantly afraid that I am not living up to the expectations that I've set for myself and that my teachers have set for me. And so that's kind of my overarching fear. And hopefully it is a helpful fear and a healthy fear, and it motivates me to continue working to benefit others. The jury is out sometimes with that. But that is what scares me. That is what I'm afraid of. So yeah, I'm starting with a heavy one. I don't know why that question was first, but it's too late to go back now. So next genre, sci-fi. What is something you have done that is beyond belief? Something you didn't think you could accomplish until you actually did it. So for me, this is kind of obvious, and maybe a lot of my questions will come back to this, but becoming a monk was a big step, and I gave up all of the comforts I had in my life. I gave up a partner I'd been with for over 10 years. I gave up all of the normal way of living for a householder to become a monk, and not only that, to move to India to join this monastery. And after having completed, a master's degree, to then decide to go into a 25-year academic program was really daunting, and I didn't know if I could do it. So that was panic-inducing to think about. But when I was given the advice to do it, I also knew it was the right thing for me to do, and so my heart was set on it. And I didn't know how it would go. I had confidence in my abilities, but at the same time, it was a big change. And now I've been here 13 years, and I couldn't think of anything else that I could be doing with my life. So it is the best way I know, given my resources and my environment and my skill set, to help others, is to continue to study and deepen my understanding of the nature of reality, and to develop tools and techniques and methods to be of service. And being here at the monastery is the best way for me to do that. And choosing to live the life of a monk, and all of the blessings that brings me in my everyday life, is the way for me to do that. But it felt beyond belief, definitely, before I did it, before I made the jump. So that is something that I've done that I feel is beyond belief until I did it. Okay, the next genre is fantasy. And so the general question for fantasy is, what is something that excites you? And so for this one, I am really excited by thought-provoking art, whether that is books or visual art or any type of artistic medium. Seeing people use their creative energy to push the boundary of what's expected and to tell stories in ways that is new and exciting and makes me think about who I am and how I am in the world is really exciting to me. So anytime I can have a chance to engage in kind of thought-provoking art, whatever artistic medium that may be, that's exciting to me. Okay, the next question. Thriller and suspense. What makes you anxious or keeps you up at night? I think the times I feel most anxious, I'm a really anxious traveler. I don't mind the actual traveling, but I am paranoid that I'm not going to be at the right place at the right time. I'm going to miss my train, miss my flight, miss my bus. And in India, everything in India is a little more chaotic than it is in other places. And I have taken 3-day train rides. I've done all of these things, and it always works out. It always works out. You just need to be relaxed. I'm not good at relaxing. I'm going to get to the airport 6 hours early. Until I've made it through security and I know where my gate is and I see my gate and my flight listed, I'm not going to be calm. Only then will I have a chance to maybe go to the cafe, get a coffee, do something, relax. But I'm so anxious until I am there. And I would rather be hours and hours early, sitting there, reading a book, than being last minute. So the idea of being late to anything is really, makes me really anxious. And it kind of, makes me tense up quite a lot. So that is something that makes me anxious or keeps me up at night, is being late and traveling and having to meet with schedules and timelines for buses and trains and planes and all these things. Okay, so the next genre is action adventure. And so what is something that thrills you or something you do for fun other than reading? And so I don't know if I would call it thrilling, but something I do for fun is I do lots of fiber arts. So I knit and I crochet. I also have started spinning yarn. I'm not very good at it. And I do other kind of what you might call homesteading arts. So I learned how to make my own soap. I bought a new sewing machine. I want to learn how to tailor and do more sewing work. The teacher I live with, he sews a lot of the clothes and the robes for a lot of the other monks that are in my house. And, Tibetans have this thing where they have these gore, how do you say in English? Just just like cloths that you put in front of door frames, and he sews those for all of us. And so he's been sewing forever. And it's funny, in Tibetan culture, sewing and tailoring and these kind of things is considered masculine, but knitting and crocheting is considered feminine. So he thinks it's very amusing that I knit and crochet. But so I want to get better at sewing. But knitting and crocheting are the main arts I do. I've been doing, my mother taught me when I was maybe 9 or 10. And at first when I was young, I couldn't pick up knitting for the life of me. I just couldn't wrap my head around like the geometry or the physics of what was going on. So I crocheted quite a lot. My mother tried to teach me knitting. It just didn't stick. And then maybe 6 years ago or 7 years ago, I decided I really wanted to learn how to knit, especially because if you knit or crochet, you know that the fabric that you get as a result are wildly different. And so crocheting just limited my options about what I could make. And luckily now in the days of YouTube, having some experience being taught at a young age and then having some competency with crochet, looking up knitting tutorials and then learning about continental knitting, which blew my mind, everything started to make sense for me. So now I knit for fun. I don't have as much time now because I'm doing much more reading, but I do knit in my spare time. Now, as not only as a monk, but as someone living in South India where it is always hot, I don't really knit for myself very much. I knit socks for myself once in a while, but most of what I knit, I give away. Right now, I'm knitting a sweater or a jumper for my sister. And it's the first one I've knit without a pattern. I just took her measurements and then I'm knitting it based only on her measurements. So we'll see how it goes. So whenever I get a break from reading and I'm in a little, overwhelmed with too much reading, I'll knit something for a couple hours. And again, not exactly thrilling, but it is something I do for fun. So the next genre is mystery and crime. What aggravates you? A problem that you have to remedy every time it comes up. You're probably going to think that I am very anal retentive or petty, but I can't deal with notifications on my phone. So like if I have unread emails, I can't deal with that. They all have to be read. If I get a little red bubble that says you have X amount of unread emails or unchecked messages, whatever it may be, can't have those. I can't have those red bubbles. They drive me crazy. My late partner, I'd look at his inbox and there would just be hundreds of unread emails. And I can't deal with unread emails. I can't deal with messages that are not checked. They all have to be checked. The boxes have to say 0. Now, I don't always answer emails right away, right? I'm busy. I don't have time. So if I can't answer it right away, I'll mark it off in some way. I'll highlight it and come back to it. I don't always have time to answer emails or whatever it may be, but I can't stand them being unread. I don't know why. It's a thing. It really aggravates me and gets under my skin. Not for other people. I don't really care what other people do in their life. But for me, if there's any of those red little bubbles on my phone, nope, can't do it. Have to get rid of them right away. So that is something that aggravates me. Okay, the next genre is humor. So what is something that delights you or makes you laugh? And so for me, I really enjoy stand-up comedy, actually. I like stand-up comedy that is kind of storytelling or kind of confessional, also like alternative or kind of surreal comedy. So just like set up joke, set up joke, set up joke. Don't like that so much. And I don't really like insult comedy. I don't like comedy that is kind of making fun of anyone. And never mind the whole punching up or punching down situation, which is like a real thing. But never mind that. I just don't find pleasure in seeing other people insulted. But I do really like comedy. My 40th birthday present to myself last year was I bought tickets for myself and my sister and my brother to go see Mark Maron perform live because I happened to be in the States and he was traveling through our state at the same time. And so that kind of comedian like Mark Maron, Tig Notaro, Mike Birbiglia, Hannah Gatsby, Fern Brady, Michelle Wolf, Taylor Tomlinson. These are just some of like the comics that are working right now that I really enjoy, that have like a confessional storytelling style that I find really fun. And so that's something that makes me laugh quite a lot and that I enjoy. Okay, the next genre is romance. What is your platonic or romantic love language? For me, I think it is thoughtfulness. When someone out of the blue just drops me a line, whether it be an email or a letter or a card or even a phone call, just to say they're thinking of me, I think that is really powerful. And so I try to do that with my friends and family as well. It doesn't have to be a long thing, just something to say, I'm thinking about you. Or, when I read a book or I watch a TV show and it makes me think of someone, I just drop them a message that says, hey, I read this random book and it made me think of you. So that is, I think, my love language. This balance of spontaneity with thoughtfulness and just small acts to let someone know that they're on my mind and they're in my heart and in my prayers in that way. Okay, just a few more genres. Next, nonfiction. What inspires or motivates you? And so for me, I'd say it is my teachers, whether it's His Holiness Dalai Lama or my root teacher, Khepa Lama Zopa Rinpoche, or the many teachers that I live and study with here at the monastery, seeing how they live a spiritual life every day, how they serve others, whether they be Buddhist or non-Buddhist, how they teach, how they meditate, how they exist in the world is really inspiring to me. And so I try to model my life after the many incredible teachers I've had and I continue to have. And so that's what inspires me. Anti-normative fiction. Again, not a real genre, but in which area of your life do you swim against the stream? Well, where to start? Uh, Queer, vegan, Buddhist monk who is into socialism and police abolition. I mean, take your pick. There's not much that I do that is in line with the mainstream. But to be honest, the one thing I do that I think is most discordant with the mainstream isn't any of those things, but as part of my spiritual path, like one of the core ideas is that the cause of almost all of your suffering is due to your self-cherishing mind, due to putting your own needs before others, putting your own comfort before others, prioritizing your own happiness is actually causing you suffering. And so the way to eliminate that is to banish the self-cherishing mind. And to do that, you have to constantly try to cultivate a mind that cherishes others as more important than yourself. And, the teachings that talk about this specifically say that if you really live these teachings with your whole heart, ordinary people will look at you like you're a crazy person because they're so discordant with everyday life. I don't know that I'm there. That's not true. I know that I'm not there. I'm very selfish and self-centered. And, the self-cherishing mind is overwhelming me probably all the time. But I do make a concerted effort to slowly but surely eliminate the self-cherishing mind and to hold others as more dear than I hold myself. And in that way, I think that's kind of the most radical thing that I think I actually do in my life. So that is the way that I swim against the stream. So that's 10 questions. For most people, you'd end there. I'm going to go ahead and answer the last two. So that way I'm going to answer all 12. Last two questions. Literary fiction. Again, not a real genre, but it is what it is. What is something that you like to take your time with? So for me, this is going to seem really small, but coffee. I really like coffee. I like good coffee. I like good coffee that is specialty coffee, well grown, roasted well, and I take my time preparing it and drinking it every day. Very rarely am I just gulping it down. That's something I like to take my time with. It's one of the few things that I spend money on outside of my dogs and my cat and the kind of animals that I take care of that live with me. My biggest expense is probably on coffee. So that is something that I like to take my time with. And then lastly, poetry. What is something ordinary or mundane that you find beautiful or extraordinary? For this one, this is more of an ideal. I don't know, I do this all the time, but I try to. It kind of necessitates a story. The short answer is apples. That doesn't make sense. So the story is, in grad school, my best friend in grad school, we met in grad school, and he was a very interesting guy. He grew up in Venice Beach, California, with bars on his window and bullet holes in his wall. He failed out of 3 high schools before becoming a roadie for Megadeth and Slayer, and he toured the world and did sex, drugs, rock and roll so hard that he burnt out by the time he was 26. And then he came back to America and he worked as a trucker for a while, joined the Teamsters Union. Somehow in all this, he found Buddhism, and he got his life together, and he got a GED, got a degree, a 4-year degree, and then I met him at Harvard. And so he was a very fiery individual, full of opinions, full of attitude, great, awesome guy. And we would study Sanskrit together quite often. I'd go over his house once or twice a week to do our Sanskrit homework. And often he'd have a bowl of apples, of fresh apples to eat. And every time he ate an apple, he would just look at it and he'd say, do you realize that it just grew on a tree? And there's something really profound about that. That's something so amazing, right? Something as simple as a piece of fruit. And you can talk about the reasons for co-emergent biology and why an apple develops starch, which turns into sugar, which is appealing to the taste buds of the different types of animals that eat it. And that causes them to get nutrients and also causes the seeds to be spread. And therefore it's, beneficial for both species, blah, blah, blah. Like from a scientific perspective, all that makes sense. But you think how much effort we put into chasing things that delight us, right? How much effort goes into cultivating experiences of joy, of manufactured joy. And some of them are quite incredible. Any book, any novel, any movie, there's so many hours, right, that go into that experience. But something as simple as a piece of fruit, that just grows on a tree. And all we have to do is pick it up. And there's so much joy and happiness in that simple piece of fruit that's so ordinary. And we so easily take it for granted. But if you think about all the things that had to come together for us to be able to not only have access to that fruit, but then to eat it and then to enjoy it, to have it be something that tastes so delicious and bring us such joy, never mind sustenance. It's miraculous. So every time I eat an apple, I try to remind myself that it just grew on a tree. And all I had to do was pick it. And I get this amazing delight in front of me. So that is something that is ordinary or mundane that I find beautiful or extraordinary, or I try to. I try to be mindful of those kind of small joys. Okay, that is my attempt to do this book tag, which I created. I don't know, maybe it went well, maybe not. That's up for you to decide. But I would love for anyone who's watching this, who's interested, to do this book tag. I'm going to tag some people. If you do it, I'd love it for you to tag some people as well. But if you're not tagged, but you still like the idea of opening up a little bit, showing a little bit about your history, sharing a little bit of who you are, then I think that's a great idea and I would love it. So everyone is invited to do it. Now, as the people I'm going to tag, there may be some of you who are tagged in this video who are wondering who the heck I am. And that's because I've been watching your videos for a while, and for most of you, I've seen you do book tags as well as your other content, and I thought you might be interested in doing this, and I wanted to hear what you had to say to these questions. I was interested in your answers. So some of you who are tagged will recognize me, and we've had conversations back and forth. Others will wonder who the heck I am. This may be your introduction to me, but it's not my introduction to you because I've been watching you for a long time on BookTube, and so hopefully you can take this invitation with that spirit in mind. So I'm just going to list out of the people that I'm tagging. But as I said, everyone is invited to do this. And after anyone who does do this, I invite you to tag anyone as well. So I am going to go through and I'm going to tag Alex at Alex Unabridged, Troy Chat Up, Joe and Mary at The Book Buds, Andrew at It Came From a Page, Crystal at Fiber Artsy, Kelsey from Simon Slashers, Alex at The Bookubus, Pat at Book Chat with Bat, Ollie at Criminale, MJ at Reading This Life, Brian at The Books Texan, Roy at Roy Reads Anything, Jim at Mystery and Mayhem, Michael K. Vaughn, Angelia at Read and Reread, Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads, Kathy at Nerdy Kathy, Gareth at Book, Songs, and Other Magic, and Stuart at Stuart Griffin. I'm kind of casting a wide net with my tags. Hopefully, even those of you who have never met me before aren't insulted. I hope you take it in the right spirit. And I hope some of you find some inspiration in these questions and have fun answering this tag. I look forward to seeing what anyone else has a chance to create with this. But for me, that's all I have today. So thank you for spending some time with me. I appreciate you. Be kind to yourselves, take care of each other, and go slowly.